Ukraine has a window of opportunity for negotiations with Russia before winter. And as for the land corridor to Crimea, that's it, friends. The Ukrainian armed forces are destroying the enemy's logistics and mining the highway. A gasoline collapse in Crimea. Ration cards have been introduced on the peninsula. Russian tourists will have to sunbathe while waiting in line at gas stations. And Lukashenko has exposed Putin's Hazel Grove in Belarus. What is the mustachioed Kremlin ally up to? A new oil depot is on fire in Russia, this time in Saratov. And Pashinyan is breaking free from Moscow's influence. Putin, furious, is sending a pre-election landing party to Yerevan to vote against the government. Hello friends, this is In the Crosshairs. I'm Alexander Pripodobny, and let's get started. Let's begin with news about the negotiations. President Zelenskyy believes that Ukraine has a window of opportunity for negotiations with Russia before winter. According to him, Russia is losing the initiative on the battlefield, so now there is a chance to end the war. Here is a direct quote from the president. Very soon, Witkoff and Kushner, by the way.
That is why I firmly believe we need to actively seek out a diplomatic path forward, to sit down and have a thorough discussion before the start of next winter. But this depends on internal pressure on Putin from his own society, as well as on the sanctions pressure from the US and Europe on Russia.
Let's continue. In fact, Witkoff and Kushner may soon come to Kyiv. Zelenskyy also mentioned this. This could happen in as little as 2 weeks. Putin cancelled the shelling of Ukraine. Another piece of news. This was reported by the bunker assistant Yuri Ushakov. He stated that Russia did not strike Kyiv this weekend because it decided to declare a truce for Trinity Sunday. According to Ushakov, the truce applies only to long-range strikes, and Russia has not declared a ceasefire on the front lines. Earlier, Shoigu threatened that Russia could strike Kyiv at any moment, hinting at the hazel tree. The president of Ukraine also reported preparations for a massive shelling on May 31st. What exactly happened there is still not entirely clear, but the following has become obvious. The land corridor to Crimea is finished, my friends. Ukrainian defenders are not only destroying Russian logistics on the highway to the peninsula with drones, but are also remotely mining it. You have already seen the road of death with burned-out fuel trucks along the land route to the peninsula. And here are shots of kilometer-long lines at gas stations in Sevastopol. A real gasoline collapse has begun in Crimea. There is simply no fuel at the gas stations. Let's take a look.
Well, here we have a line for gasoline. Unbelievable. So I drove all the way around the bypass. From Kirovo, along the bypass, I checked everywhere. There's no gasoline at any of the gas stations.
The city of Sudak. The situation with fuel, as you can see, is right behind me. Come visit tourists in your own cars. We are happy to welcome you. But how you will leave, we don't know. Just come in your own cars.
Well, apparently Russian tourists in Crimea are in for some vivid experiences. And the main, vibe of this Crimean summer is standing in line for gasoline under the scorching southern sun. Can you even imagine that? By the way, local social media groups have just posted, a funny meme on this very topic. Check out this upgrade to an eternal classic. The young lady who didn't want to leave Crimea this year would have had to go on foot because the occupation authorities are dealing with the gasoline shortage in a simple, traditional way, in the best Soviet style. They've introduced fuel coupons and limited the distribution of gasoline to 20 liters per person per day.
What do you think of a poster like that, Andrei Nikolaevich? You could hang it right here. It would look perfect, right? Well, there's no line. The gas station is over there. Do you accept coupons? Hello, I'm here. Do you accept them? We accept them. That's it. See, they accept coupons, everything's working.
Well, is it even necessary to say that the fuel shortage is connected to the land corridor to Crimea being cut off by Ukrainian drones? The Ukrainian armed forces are at work, and the campaign against Russian logistics is gaining momentum. This is how Crimea is really returning to its native harbor. Let's take a look at my colleague's report.
The land corridor to Crimea is finished. The occupiers are complaining that the Ukrainian armed forces are mining the Novorossiya highway. Gasoline has disappeared in Sevastopol. What's next? We'll tell you all about it right now. The occupiers have urged the population to refrain from traveling on the Novorossiya highway due to the mine threat. According to Belitsky, the head of the occupation administration of the Zaporizhia region, the Ukrainian armed forces used a remote mining system on the highway, According to Belitsky, unmanned aerial surveillance drones are dropping explosive devices that can be triggered by detecting movement, regardless of whether it is a car or a pedestrian in the danger zone. I urge all drivers to be extraordinarily cautious and alert on the roads, especially on the shoulders and in areas where suspicious objects may be present. If you discover any dangerous objects, immediately report them to emergency services and keep a safe distance. Ukraine has blocked the strategic land corridor to Crimea. The frequent deployment of medium-range drones in recent months has enabled the Ukrainian armed forces to take control of the federal highway R-280 Novorossiya. This vital logistical artery, which serves as a critical supply line for both the annexed peninsula and the Russian forces on the southern front in the Kherson and Zaporizhzhia regions, has transformed into what is now known as a road of death. Ever since the very beginning of the spring season, drone strikes have successfully neutralized and disabled Russian air defenses in the region, after which these drones gained the ability to maneuver with complete freedom anywhere in the occupied territories. Now, reaching the Novorossiya highway, which is located 100 kilometers from the front line, takes the advanced Ukrainian UAVs just 1 hour. Back on May 21st, the Russian authorities officially restricted heavy truck traffic on the R-280 Novorossiya highway.
As a result, 92 and 95 octane gasoline disappeared from gas stations in Sevastopol. Lines formed for fuel. Ration cards were introduced on the peninsula, and fuel distribution was limited to 20 liters per day per person. Restrictions were also imposed on the import of gasoline via the Crimean bridge. The occupation governor, Mikhail Razvozhayev, reported that fuel problems began about a week after the authorities restricted movement along the so-called land bridge to Crimea due to drone strikes. Razvozhayev did not specify the exact reason for the fuel shortage, only noting that the city continues to face logistical difficulties, the causes of which are known. He promised to restore gasoline supplies within the day. According to a statement by Alexander Talipov, advisor to the head of Crimea, Russia has two main ways of delivering fuel to the region. Delivery is carried out by ferries and depends on the weather, or through the annexed territories. Talipov clarified that for security reasons, tankers are not transported across the Crimean bridge. Pro-war Z channels directly link the current fuel crisis to strikes on this logistics route. The Romanov Light channel writes,
"The absence of gasoline in Sevastopol are the consequences of systematic enemy strikes on oil refineries and fuel trucks in the land corridor to Crimea."
A military informant commenting on Razvozhayev's statement about gasoline problems published a photo of yet another burning fuel tanker after a Ukrainian kamikaze drone strike on the land corridor to Crimea. OSINT researcher Clément Molin counted 125 Russian trucks, the majority of which were struck in May on vital logistical routes in the territories annexed in 2022. According to his data, more than 80 of them were completely destroyed or burned. As stated by Molin, an intensive campaign against Russian logistics first started in May and has only been steadily gathering more momentum since then. The researcher calls the scale of this campaign unprecedented.
By the way, here's some interesting statistics on Ukrainian strikes against Russia. Ukraine has sharply increased strikes on industrial and military targets in Russia and in the temporarily occupied Crimea. Over the course of a week, UAVs and missiles from the Ukrainian armed forces struck 8 regions within a radius of up to 1,200 kilometers. On Sunday night, Ukrainian drones attacked the Saratov oil refinery, a facility in the Kirov region, and a fuel storage site in Rostov-on-Don, or more precisely, near that city. 3 facilities were also attacked on Saturday night: the port and military airfield in Taganrog, as well as a transshipment oil depot in the Krasnodar region. Let's take a look at the details of these strikes in the following report.
Drones are once again attacking Russian oil refineries. Large-scale fires broke out at several sites. The oil depots in Saratov and Matveyev Kurgan came under attack. Watch the report for more on the aftermath of the attacks. On the night of May 31st, drones attacked the Saratov oil refinery. According to videos published by Telegram channels, a fire broke out at the facility, causing thick black smoke to rise over the city. Sources of fire were recorded in several areas of the refinery at once. According to the Telegram channel Sternenko, the heaviest damage was inflicted on the primary crude oil processing unit. OSINT analyst from the Telegram channel Astra reports that, according to a photo from an eyewitness published by the Supernova Plus channel, the tank farm at the Saratov refinery is on fire. The attack was confirmed by the governor of the Saratov region, Roman Busagin, but he did not mention the fire at the refinery. This is far from the first attack on the Saratov refinery. After the drone attack on March 21st, the facility had already suspended operations. In 2025 alone, the refinery in Saratov was attacked at least 10 times. Meanwhile, in Russia's Rostov region, an oil depot caught fire in the village of Matveyev Kurgan. Footage of the large-scale fire following the drone attack appeared on Telegram channels. The regional governor, Yuri Slayusar, stated that the fire at a private company's fuel storage facility allegedly broke out due to falling drone debris. In addition, after the drone attack, a fire broke out at the Lazarevo linear production and dispatch station in Russia's Kirov region. The regional governor reported an attack on a facility located in the Ozomsky district. Overall, the Russian Ministry of Defense reported allegedly shooting down 216 drones overnight in the Belgorod, Bryansk, Volgograd, Saratov, and other regions of Russia, as well as in the temporarily occupied Crimea.
Now let's get a bit more information about Ukrainian deep strikes right into the heart of Russia. Western media have shown exclusive and unique video footage from a command center controlling long-range drones. From this secret hideout, skilled Ukrainian fighters strike enemy military targets. The strikes are adjusted using artificial intelligence and the Palantir system. On the screens, you can see the real-time routes of the drones, target coordinates, and data that is constantly analyzed by artificial intelligence. The system analyzes and processes thousands of parameters, including the specific geographic locations where Russian air defenses shoot down drones, and then plots new routes through gaps in the enemy's air defense. For example, a commander with the call sign Vector said that there are several such centers, and they are dispersed, so the destruction of one site will not affect the operation of the entire system at all. And let's not forget about Lukashenko. He exposed Putin's Oreshnik in Belarus. That's the very one, in short, to which Russian and Belarusian soldiers transferred munitions during the nuclear exercises back in May. So, for example, OSINT investigators uncovered railway transport data, which shows that elements of Oreshnik are based at one of the airfields in Belarus. OSINT analysts also revealed previously unknown details about this Oreshnik. What is the Kremlin hiding? My colleagues will tell you about their so-called miracle weapon.
It has become known exactly where Oreshnik is located in Belarus. OSINT analysts have revealed previously unknown details about the missile. Ukrainian experts studied the debris of the Oreshnik that Russia used to strike Lviv. You can learn more about this in the following report. Elements of the medium-range missile system Oreshnik in Belarus are based at the Krychev 6 airfield. This was reported by Militarny with reference to the Belarusian opposition resource Belarusian Railway Workers Community. It is noted that between December 20th and 29th, a large military train arrived in the area of the Krychev-6 airbase. According to the shipping documents, the shipment was dispatched from the Kapustin Yar station of the Privolzhskaya Railway. According to the publication, the train consisted of 54 flatbed cars carrying cargo. Military equipment was transported on the flatbeds, equipment was in the covered cars, and a separate car carried cartridges and other ammunition.
As of the middle of May 2026, the contingent delivered to this facility had still not yet departed from the site. Furthermore, absolutely no return shipment of equipment or property was recorded.
1-2.
Meanwhile, it has recently become known that the advanced ballistic missile system known as Oreshnik, which the Russians used to strike the Lviv region in January 2026, was actually manufactured back in 2017. Reuters reports this information, citing various sources among Ukrainian missile experts. The recovered missile debris revealed that this Oreshnik was constructed from specific components originating from both Russia and Belarus approximately 9 years ago.
We were quite surprised, because the official reports claim it's a very new missile. But if you look closely at the year of assembly, it clearly says 2017.
Vladislav Vlasyuk, sanctions advisor to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, stated that surviving electronic components were found in the Oreshnik missile that struck the Lviv region. The debris from the Oreshnik missile, which Russia used to strike Bila Tserkva on May 24th, is still being examined.
Putin's Belarusian ally also decided to speak out. Lukashenko responded to Ukraine's statement about 500 targets on Belarusian territory that Kyiv could strike if the potato Führer decides to actually enter the war. He said that he also has a very serious target near the border with precise coordinates. What is Lukashenko planning? Does Belarus really pose a threat of launching an offensive against Ukraine? And what is the Belarusian army actually capable of doing right now? And can the Ukrainian armed forces do anything to stop them in response? Let's take a look at the report prepared by my colleagues.
Russia has turned Belarus into a military staging ground. Lukashenko is threatening Ukraine with an offensive. What is the Belarusian army really capable of, and how will the Ukrainian armed forces respond? We'll tell you all about it right now. The president of Belarus threatens, if a military attack is carried out against Belarus from any territory, then the war in Ukraine will take on a different character. The self-proclaimed president of Belarus also commented on the statement by the commander of the Ukrainian Armed Forces drone systems, Robert Modjar-Brovdy, who said that Ukraine has about 500 designated targets on Belarusian territory in case Belarus enters the war. Lukashenko responded to Kremlin propagandist Pavel Zarubin.
Well, Pavel, maybe they have indeed identified 500 targets. Thank you for letting us know that we have 500 targets for them. However, we have one very serious target with extremely precise coordinates, and it is not far from Belarus at all. They understand that too.
At the same time, Lukashenko was noticeably nervous and trembling.
Let Vladimir Alexandrovich forgive me for this, but this is just nonsense. And the positions of the military differ.
He promised that Belarus would never attack Ukraine. At the same time, Lukashenko claims that the Belarusian side is closely monitoring the situation at the border and sees Ukrainian units stationed there. The Kremlin, of course, will pressure the Belarusian president into all sorts of adventures. But for Lukashenko, war with Ukraine is outright suicide. Putin has already turned Belarus into his staging ground for a new attack on Ukraine, writes AP News. The Lukashenko regime is deeply involved in the war, with more than 500 enterprises engaged in producing weapons and ammunition for the Russians. First of all, the publication reminded that it was from Belarus that Russian tanks advanced toward Kiev in 2022. But when the Kiev in 3 days scenario failed, Moscow tried to negotiate a quick end to the conflict. And it was Belarus that hosted the first negotiations between the Russian and Ukrainian delegations, the publication writes.
As the conflict turned into a grueling war of attrition, Belarus has consistently played an absolutely vital role in supporting Moscow's military efforts. Belarusian factories were responsible for manufacturing microchips and other essential electronics, high-precision optical guidance systems, artillery ammunition, and heavy-duty transport vehicles used for moving Russian ballistic missiles.
Microchips made in Belarus were found in the debris of the Oreshnik launched at Ukraine on May 24th. In addition to all this, Minsk provided training grounds for Russian troops, regularly conducted joint military exercises, and actively treated wounded occupiers in its hospitals. According to official data, the Belarusian armed forces number 48,000 soldiers, which is negligible compared to Russia's 1.5 million strong army. In the event of a potential war, Belarus is ready to mobilize 290,000 people, but they will need proper weapons and training to be combat ready. Military analyst from Minsk, Alexander Alesin, provides this assessment.
The Belarusian army is not currently well suited for offensive operations. An attack from Belarus would necessitate the mobilization of up to 500,000 soldiers. This would mean completely withdrawing individuals from the national economy and finding weapons for them. I consider this scenario to be highly improbable at this stage.
According to the expert, Ukraine has built strong fortifications on the border with Belarus and has laid mines that could easily thwart any attempt at invasion.
Even with small forces, the Ukrainians can easily defend themselves and inflict heavy losses on the Belarusian army. From a military standpoint, it is impossible to launch an offensive from Belarusian territory without suffering heavy casualties.
Alesin believes that Lukashenko is satisfied with Belarus's position as a key supplier of military equipment. He is firmly opposed to direct participation in the war.
The absolute last thing Lukashenko wants is to actually enter the fighting, and he will cling to his current position at any cost to avoid combat, while still reaping massive profits from the war.
According to military experts and intelligence assessments, the risk of opening a new front from the north remains, but a large-scale direct invasion from Belarusian territory is unlikely.
While Belarus is losing the last remnants of its independence, Armenia has taken the opposite course. Yerevan is breaking free from Kremlin control and turning toward the west. Putin, simply furious, is threatening Pashinyan with higher gas prices, and on the eve of elections in Armenia, the Kremlin wants to send 100,000, attention, pro-Russian Armenians to Yerevan to vote against the government. A detailed report on the situation in Armenia is coming up in our segment.
Armenia is breaking away from Kremlin influence and moving closer to Europe. Pashinyan has a strong chance of winning the upcoming elections, while Putin is threatening Yerevan with a Ukrainian scenario. Will the Kremlin interfere in Armenia's affairs? We'll tell you everything right now. Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan and his party's civil contract are leading in popularity ahead of the country's parliamentary elections. According to sociological surveys, his political force holds first place despite fierce competition from the pro-Russian opposition and opponents' plans to organize protests. According to research by the Brevis Center of the International Republican Institute, Nikol Pashinyan's party could receive about 65% of the votes among decided voters. This is causing panic in the Kremlin. They fear that Pashinyan's victory could solidify Yerevan's course toward closer ties with Europe. Against this backdrop, Russian dictator Vladimir Putin has already lashed out with threats toward Armenia, initially reminding of the special relationship between the countries over the centuries. During a conversation with the media following the Eurasian Economic Union summit, Putin threatened Armenia with a Ukrainian scenario, claiming that the crisis in Ukraine supposedly began with Kiev's attempts to move toward European integration. In addition, the Kremlin leader began to threaten economic consequences and the curtailment of cooperation between the countries.
It is virtually and practically impossible to combine one with the other in a single day or overnight. Therefore, we will be compelled and forced by circumstances, not just in some specific areas, but essentially in all our work, in this case with Armenia, in the economic sphere related to integration processes, to gradually wind it down and bring it to a close.
Putin also added that in the event of Armenia joining the EU, it will no longer have any advantages from Russia.
There will certainly be absolutely no such special preferences as there are today. According to our initial preliminary estimates and calculations, or rather, according to a wide range of various experts at the expert level, this will lead to at least a 14% total loss of Armenia's GDP.
However, Putin is not limiting himself to threats alone. As reported by Reuters, the Kremlin is running a campaign to undermine Pashinyan's chances in the elections. According to sources from Western intelligence agencies cited by the publication, Russia secretly wants to send about 100,000 voters to Armenia so that they can vote against the current prime minister.
Back in October of last year, the Kremlin established a brand new division called the Directorate for Strategic Cooperation and Partnership, which, according to 4 separate knowledgeable sources, oversees influence operations in Armenia. These sources, speaking on condition of anonymity, have reportedly indicated that in recent months, Russian officials have actively discussed the potential strategy of sending Armenians living in Russia to vote for Pashinyan's opponents.
According to the recent publication, Moscow is officially putting forward Russian-Armenian businessman Samvel Karapetyan as its candidate, who is currently under house arrest on serious charges of money laundering, and making public calls to seize power. Journalist investigator Ilya Rozdestvensky talks about the Kremlin's plans in Armenia on the Popular Politics channel, having studied leaked documents from Russia's FSB.
These documents in general indicate that Nikol Pashinyan does not please the Kremlin at all, does not please Vladimir Putin, and that he must be removed by all possible means.
The journalist notes that Moscow is developing a backup plan in case it fails to bring about the defeat of Nikol Pashinyan's party. This involves creating a pro-Russian coalition in the Armenian parliament. However, in his opinion, it is unlikely that the Kremlin's proxies will be able to secure a majority. As is known, at the beginning of May, Armenia hosted dozens of heads of state at the European Political Community Summit. For the first time in history, an EU-Armenia summit was also held in the Armenian capital. This seriously angered Moscow, and the Kremlin was particularly irritated by the presence of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy at the summit. All of this indicates that Pashinyan is steadily steering Armenia towards leaving Russia's sphere of influence.
In news from the front, Ukraine is seizing the initiative in the drone war and striking Russian logistics, communication centers, and rear positions with increasing force. The Russians are retreating from Malotokmachka, and Shoigu is making excuses for why their army cannot capture this village. Let's watch.
There's a new piece of propaganda for the Russian public. Shoigu says that 56 countries are fighting against Russia. Ukraine is seizing the initiative in the drone war and is striking Russian logistics, communications, and rear positions with increasing force. More details coming up. Russia has come up with a new explanation for its failures at the front. It turns out that not only Ukraine is fighting against the Russian Federation, but as many as 56 countries at once. This is exactly what the Secretary of the Security Council of the Russian Federation, Sergei Shoigu, said while commenting on the Ukrainian-German drone production.
I wouldn't single out Germany in particular here, because if you look at it overall, there are actually 56 countries fighting against us.
It is reliably known that amid failures at the front, the Russian Federation has called on North Korea for help. At the same time, Russia itself has long been recruiting foreigners from all over the world. People from Africa and India are lured in with promises of work or study. In the end, they are sent to the front lines. The spokesperson for the Defense Forces of southern Ukraine, Vladislav Voloshin, stated that the Russians have become more active in several sectors of the Orikhiv direction, trying to reach the outskirts of Orikhiv by May 31st, but they are unable to advance because the village of Mala Tokmachka stands in their way.
They still have Mala Tokmachka on their way, so I truly hope they will remember this small settlement for the rest of their entire lives.
At the same time, according to the military, the defense forces are fighting back against the enemy, and in this section of the front, the Ukrainian armed forces have not lost any positions or territory so far. Meanwhile, Ukraine is gradually seizing the initiative. In the drone war and precision strikes and the systematic destruction of Russian logistics and communications is already beginning to change the situation at the front. This was stated by military and political observer Oleksandr Kovalenko. The analyst is of the opinion that in the long run, Russian troops may find themselves losing safe supply routes along the coast of the Sea of Azov, which will create significant and severe logistical challenges for sustaining the occupying force in the south. In his opinion, it is precisely the systematic destruction of logistics and communications that could become the key to weakening the Russian Federation's defensive lines, including the so-called Surovikin line.
Without essential supplies and sufficient manpower, this front line will not function. Our strikes must deprive Russia of the ability to maintain its defense.
A high-ranking officer from the drone forces of the 1st Corps of the Azov National Guard confirmed that Ukrainian troops continue to strengthen control over key logistical routes of the Russian occupiers in the southern region.
Dear friends, that's all the latest interesting news for now. We are preparing the next episode for you, and our team is diligently gathering the most important information about what has happened in the world and in Ukraine. So subscribe to Union and don't miss our next stream. Bye for now.